Hey guys, Third here with Boffer Basics, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build a one-handed sword using the box method. The box method is quite simply building a box around a core and then adding blade layers to it. It's one of the kind of pinnacle building concepts of foamsmithing, and once you've got it down pat, you can build just about any weapon in the game, from single-handed swords to bats and clubs, maces, hammers, 8-foot glaives. All of that can be built off of a box. On this weapon I'm going to be showing you guys how to apply a stabbing tip to a single-handed sword. And I didn't mention this in the next section where I talk about materials, but you'll need some stabbing tip material for that if you want to make it stabbing. In this case I've used some Dick's Stadium seating from Dick's Sporting Goods. You can pick it up for about $8, and a single layer of this on one-handed weapons makes excellent stabbing tip material. You can also use thermoset stadium seating or any equivalent, anything that feels similar to it. Or some marine foam based yoga mats like the Gold's Gym yoga mat. A couple layers of that is also an acceptable substitute. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Alright, so I've gone ahead and gotten everything prepped for this. I've got my core ready, marked out my area for my handle and my pommel and my blade. I've biscuited the ends of my core, and I roughed it up a little bit with some sandpaper. I've got some DAP that I'll be using for glue, strapping tape, and then I've got all my pieces cut out. So what you're going to need for this is, to form a box, is pieces that are as wide as your core. So this is 1/2 inch wide, this is a 1/2 inch round core, and as long as your blade. So you'll need 2 of those, and they'll be forming the base layer of your box. They'll be getting glued on like this. Then you'll need 2 more pieces that are as wide as your foam and your core. So if you're using blue foam is 7/16 inch wide, and 1/2 inch core, another 7/16. Or if you want to make things even easier, one of my favorite tools in my shop, and probably the most useful, is a T-square or a combination square. So you just get everything glued together, square it up, and adjust. And then you don't have to worry about making any measurements or if all of your pieces are correct, because you've got the exact measurement locked into your T-square, and then you can use that to measure out the pieces of your blade. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start by gluing our core and setting that aside so that you don't get anything on it, and then we'll glue the insides, I guess, of these 2 pieces here. Okay, our DAP is tacky and ready to apply. So to start, we're going to start at the tip, and very carefully, so as not to get the rest of this glued piece stuck, I'm going to kind of make like a scorpion tail out of it and roll it down the sides here. That'll prevent it from us accidentally pushing too hard when applying it and stretching it out, which would pre-compress the foam, cause it to hit too hard. And you also go on gently so that if you end up a little bit off, like I did in that section there, you can just pick it up and move it over in line. Now if you mess up a little bit at this point, it's not a big deal, because when we do our sides, the reapplication, or the application of DAP to the sides, is going to cause the uncured DAP from these pieces to kind of reactivate. The solvents in the fresh DAP will reactivate it. So it's going to make them loose again. So 1, don't be surprised when that happens. It's not anything wrong, it's exactly how DAP is going to react when new solvents are reintroduced. And 2, it can be a godsend, or it can be very forgiving, because if you mess something up, didn't get quite where you wanted to be, things aren't as squared up as you would like I'm a little bit off here, it lets you kind of mulligan and get things reset. So, once you've got that on, you can lay it on a flat surface and kind of make sure that everything's in line, and ready to apply our sides. So, we'll go ahead and get those dapped. These 2 pieces, again, are going to be as wide, I've already got them cut, as this here, and they're going to be getting applied on either side of it like this, and this is the box. This is the foundation of the box style method. Once you've learned how to build a proper box, you can pretty much build just about anything in this sport. Most gear, whether it's high-tech or low, can be built using the box method, from swords, single-handed swords to two-handed swords to glaives, or even to half padding. On this javelin here, for example, that I helped one of my roommates build today, rather than trying to spiral wrap or just wrap blue foam around the 3/8 core that we used, it was much easier just to build a box, and he was able to get kind of a cool spiral to it. So the box method is extremely versatile, and one of the key foamsmithing concepts that you should learn. So anyway, let's go ahead and get these glued and ready to apply. Okay, our pieces are ready to apply. So as I said, it's totally possible for a little bit of that glue to come undone when you're working with a box that's still kind of exposed on a face, and that's totally fine. Just kind of press it back into place, and honestly this next step is going to help get everything kind of back and realigned. So once our glue is tacky and ready to go, being careful how we handle it, because once we reapply these loose parts, they're applied for good. You're going to go ahead and start at the top, and again, you want to kind of make a little bit of a scorpion tail kind of deal there, and you want to choose an edge to line up on. This is going to be your kind of perfect edge. Everything that you build on for or however you build the rest of the sword, you're going to be lining up on that one side. That way, if you have any imperfections, you just have one edge to clean up at the end. Alright, and so once we've got that on, which we put on very kind of loose and carefully, at this point we can push down and push everything back in, and this is going to get everything squared up and make sure that we have a nice flat blade. Alright, and then we're ready to apply our second piece. And we're just going to kind of roll that on. And once those are applied, go ahead and you want to make sure you get your blade nice and straight without any twists in it. So using a nice flat table and pressing down before we got everything all squeezed tight is going to get a good straight blade, going to make our sword look better in the end, last longer, and not have any weird twists in it. Once you've done that, you want to kind of go up and down the blade, squeezing, because remember we've just built a square box on a round core. So in each corner there's going to be little gaps. So you go down and squeeze, and that's going to help get the foam in those areas to kind of clinch in and make contact with the glue on the core and create a good glue bond. It's going to hold it on there nice and tight. And that's that. Now we're ready to move on to our first blade layer. So that's going to be 2 more pieces of the same length as the box side pieces. So we're not going up and over in this step. We're not adding a cap to the box here because we've used a biscuit. If you don't biscuit your core, at this step go ahead and add a cap. But we're just going to be adding 2 pieces to the side right here. So go ahead and do that. Alright, first blade layers are tacky, so we're going to go ahead and apply these. Again, this is the nice smooth edge that I've been working with, so we'll go ahead and start there and apply it nice and straight on that edge and gently. Just as with making any other weapon, it's important that when you apply your foam that you don't do so heavy-handedly. Foam is just a series of air bubbles, and pre-compression can cause perfectly good weapons to fail. So when you yank and pull on your foam, stretching it out, what you're really doing is compressing the bubbles within the foam. That's the shock absorber of our weapons. That's why foam works for what we do. And if you don't carefully make sure that you preserve the integrity of that, then your weapon's going to hit harder, or it could just outright fail. I've seen a lot of perfectly good gear just fail, even though it should pass because of flaws in construction like that. Alright, so we're ready to move on to the next and final step of making a basic box build blade. But first, let's go ahead and square up our tip. I went over a little bit. It's better to go over a little at the tip and have to square it up than it is to be too short. So next thing we're going to do is make a small angle on the last layer that we applied. So just about a 45-degree angle, and you're going to bevel that just a little bit. right on the outside. And that's just going to help our final blade layer roll over the top more smoothly, make it less squared up. If you don't mind that kind of squared up look, then you don't need to do that. So our final layer is one long continuous piece that's going to be long enough to go all the way around our blade here. So from one side over to the next. This is the only layer of our sword that actually goes over the tip of the weapon, and it's going to make our third blade and be the final layer that we add. Now, some people are probably going to be a little bit shocked or concerned that there's only a single layer of blue foam over the tip. Even when doing stabbing tip weapons on a single sword, a single-handed sword, as long as you've got a biscuit on the end, or if you didn't biscuit and you followed the previous instructions, you would have added a cap foam over the core there. You've already got one layer of foam at the tip. Following that with another layer of foam and then adequate stab tip material is going to make it hit just fine and be a perfectly safe and stable weapon. The reason that we build it like this is because the more foam that you have at the tip going off, the more unstable it's going to be. So older style tips would be 2 inches tall, and they would have put a piece of foam on the outside on both sides, making the rather phallic looking predecessor swords that some of us fought with when we started or may have seen online. And that was to stabilize it so that your stab tip didn't just fold right over because there was so much excess material in here. With a good solid build like this, you can make safe passing gear that no longer has that problem. So we'll go ahead and dap all the way up and over, dap our final blade layer, and get it applied. Okay, so our blade here is ready to apply, and it's more than long enough so it doesn't really matter what side we start on. Again, this is my nice even edge, so we're going to get that lined up and apply that. And this is going to be the final blade layer that we need to apply. If you don't intend to make your weapon stabbing, which if I'm making group gear or for a particularly newer fighter, I typically won't add a stabbing tip, just because it does shorten the life of the weapon. But if you're making a weapon for yourself, I highly recommend adding a stab tip. It adds a whole another level of versatility to your weapon, and can really broaden your fighting. If it's not something that you utilize regularly, it's something that you should really consider learning how to use a little bit better. So once we've got our final blade layer attached, we can go ahead and get everything all nice and cleaned up. And since we are going to make this weapon stabbing, we're going to go ahead and add our stab tip. So this piece here is as wide as my blade and is 6 inches long. Even on a min red, 6 inches should be more than adequate. It's enough to get you up and over the tip of the sword and back down the other side, and then you'll trim that up to the profile of our blade. The only difference again being making sure that you get the correct width. So we'll get this cut out and apply. Okay. So typically your sword blade is going to last a lot longer than your stab tips. Stab tips, especially if you stab a lot, just the nature of marine foam, break down a lot faster. So rather than gluing them on, I tend to like to use a little bit of carpet tape and apply them like that. That way when the stab tip goes, I can very easily remove it. As well, over time, stabbing puts a lot of sideways force on your weapon as you stab, and it can cause the tip to become unstable. Over time, this will result in it moving too far and possibly failing for folding over, or you just might start to realize that your tip is starting to fold over quite a bit, and you want your weapon to last longer. You can just get in, tear the stab tip off, and continue using the sword as just as a single blue sword, or a class 1 non-stabbing sword for dagger here and Bellegarth. So once we've got our stab tip applied, you can take a marker. There we go. Draw a line to follow here and get it trimmed up. Now, it's important to remember, if you are making these for Belogarth, to qualify for the template exemption. So any weapon that has a minimum width of 3 inches doesn't have to be templated for the 2.5-inch stab tip template. If your weapon isn't 3 inches, I guess I should say, you have to have a semicircular tip. So squared tips, the template will typically be tested on the squared part by most weapons checkers, and so you'll fail because it's not technically semicircular at that point, so they're still going to template it. So you want to make it semicircular, and if it's not at least 3 inches wide, which if you built on a 1/2 inch it should be, even with blue foam being slightly under 1/2 inch, then you need to make sure that your tip is an appropriate shape so it can't pass through a 2.5-inch template. So, once we've got this on, we're ready to move on to our torque taping. So I did a video, or I'm going to do a video on torque taping, and you can find that with the other foamsmithing videos. But it's a pretty simple concept, and it's going to greatly improve the longevity of your weapons. So you'll just need a few strips of strapping tape. In this case I've actually got clear duct tape. It's not as good, but unfortunately my local Walmart has decided they hate me and no longer want to carry the strapping tape I was used to using. Anyway, torque taping is pretty simple. Apply a little bit of tape to the box of your weapon and place a thumb on it. Wrapping your hand around the back side, gently pull the blade towards you and then pull on the tape in an outward direction. And then apply it to this face. And press down on the adhesive to get it to stick. So as we go over the tip, we go over gently without compressing the foam and lay it on the other side. So what this does is you pull the foam gently towards you and it's under tension. It wants to go back to the other side. The tape has been pulled out taut and stretched out the fiberglass fibers in it, and they want to go back. They don't want to be in a stretched out position. So as the tip tries to pull back, it fights against the strapping tape, which also wants to pull back into a neutral position. So we put everything under tension. Then we're going to flip the sword over and do the same thing on the other side. Again, apply to the box area, place a thumb, wrap your hands around the back, pull your tip, pull on the tape, and apply, but don't wrap around the side. Once you've got that under absolutely no tension, back up and over. And in between pieces, rotate so that you're always working opposite sides, and make sure that you're getting your tip back in line. If you find that you're starting to kind of get it off kilter on your last piece, which I just do enough to cover up my stab tip here, pull it in whatever direction you need to actually get it in line. So on this, I'm just going to pull the tape taut, let it ride over, and down, and I'm back in line, and that provides significant stability to your stabbing tip. If you find that you've got a weapon that doesn't have any sort of taping at the tip, and it's starting to get kind of wonky or unstable, applying a little bit of structural taping can go a long way in getting that weapon back to being stable enough to continue to stab with. So it adds a good bit of durability, even on weapons that don't have a 4-pound box. Finally, to finish things off, we're just going to run a piece of tape down the flat of the blade. Now you'll notice that you've got all your seams on your sides here, and this will kind of cover those up, help hold things together a little bit. Now you can say, why not just build your blade over that seam there? And honestly, I don't know. I've always built my swords like this, and I've always seen others build weaponry like this. But you could certainly have built your blade on this side and avoided some of the seams, though you would still have blade seams, of course. I suppose some of the reasoning behind not doing that would be possible, I guess, stress that the seam could be put under the box seam from the constant compression of the blade on that side. Though I can't imagine that's any that it wouldn't be put under already during normal use. So you can play around with it and see if it works out better for you. Just as a matter of consistency, I build my blades with the box seam on the outside. So, strip down down both sides. And we are done with the blade portion of our sword. All that's left is to add a pommel and a handle, and it's ready to go. And that is how you build a basic one-handed sword using the box method. If you liked this video, please be sure to like and subscribe and share it around. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below or send me a message. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.